Hi there, I'm Angela. Welcome to the channel or welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the fourth and final installment of my Vogue V9246 make. I'm doing View E, the long pants. And if you've been following along so far, I greatly appreciate you hanging out with me. It's been nice to have the company while I get some sewing done. So if you're ready, let's jump right in. So where we left off with these pants, I have the front and the back of the pants pretty much done, and so I'm working on the waistband, and that's where we'll pick up today. And just as a little reminder, the front of the pants has a dart on each side, and it will have a waistband that gets stitched on. And then the back of the pants will fold over to make a casing for elastic. So a little bit of a recap. I was having some trouble fiddling with the waistband on last time, just because I had to make alterations to the front of the pants, and I'm not just talking about the crotch seam, because that alteration worked out just fine, but where I ran into issues, I had to take so much off of the outer seams on both sides because the pants were huge. They were swallowing me up. They were so large, even though I did choose the correct size based on the envelope measurements and also on the printed measurements on the pattern pieces. So I was kind of surprised by that. Anyway, it meant that I had to lop off a whole big bunch on the outside of the pants. And so where that kind of had me stumped was if I hadn't had to do that and I cut out the waistband per the pattern piece, what should have happened would be that the front should have been significantly longer than the waistband, and I would have sewn an ease stitch along the top of the waistband on the pants and then eased it in to fit the waistband. And as it happened, the waistband piece pretty much is exactly the same length as my pants waistband, even including seam allowances. So I'm not worrying about doing any kind of easing or anything like that, and I don't think it'll even be necessary because the pants do fit pretty well now, and by the time I put the elastic into the back, I think that it'll be just fine. So what I am starting with today is I'm going to fold and press the top edge of my waistband 5/8 of an inch. And just double check that and make sure that that is right. Yeah, 5/8 of an inch. The problem that I think I'm going to run into, though, this fabric just doesn't hold a crease very well. We'll see. Maybe having this interfacing on will help it, although I don't think so. It'll probably just add more bulk to it. I'm going to just try pressing it just to at least have like a loose crease and something to work with when it comes time. And one thing I had meant to do before I started on this last portion here was to look up tips for ironing with Ponte. And one of you guys, and I'm not sure if the person's comfortable if I say their name, but actually had a good tip about using a tailor's clapper when pressing a thicker materials such as this Ponte. I think that would be fantastic. I just don't have a clapper, so it'll probably go on my wish list for sure. And I feel like it's got a little bit of you can tell that there's a fold there, if not a sharp crease. You can see that there. It's enough to let me know and to remind me that this is where it gets folded. And I am supposed to trim this 5/8 inch down to 3/8. I'm going to hold off on that for now, just to see how things go. I can trim it off later if it's in the best interest to do so. So then next, what I am going to do is to pin the waistband to the top edge of the pants. And I have a little notch here marking where my center is on the waistband. I'm probably going to time lapse a lot of this because I know you guys will be bored to tears just watching me pin pieces together. And what I'm finding as I get to this end here, there is a little bit of like seam allowance left of the waistband, but it's not as much as I thought that it would be. I think it is going to be fine as long as I have a little bit of overlap there to work with. It should be okay. If I find that it's just giving me too much of an issue, I can, last resort, cut another waistband piece because I have enough leftover fabric. I bought enough of this fabric to make the jacket that's in this pattern and goes with these pants, which will be my next project. Okay, I've got it all pinned. Now I'm going to go ahead and stitch it, and I will meet you back over here. Okay, I've got it stitched on. Did sew over all my pins though, most of them. Kind of a bad habit. Although I don't know that it's like the worst thing in the world. It is until you break your needle, I guess. Or it isn't until you break your needle. So then the waistband gets pressed, the seam allowance gets pressed toward the waistband. So I am going to go ahead and do that now. It might be better if I turn the pants inside out. I can't even convey to you guys how substantial this ponte is. It keeps like blowing my mind every time I pick the whole pants up and try to turn the legs inside out or right side out. It's like crazy heavy. These are going to be a good fall and winter pants. And I've often toyed with the idea of getting a professional grade iron, was it gravity fed iron? But I'm not sure like how the logistics, how I could set it up in my room here. I'm not ruling it out, the thought of doing that one day. But for now, I'll just stick with my shark. So now we're going to turn the pants over and focus on the back side. And even though I'm going to follow, at least at first, where the fold line is per the pattern piece, I always like to just have the actual elastic to make sure that, everything is going to fit just fine. So the fold line was 1 5/8 inches from the top edge of the pants back. You're actually supposed to press this where the fold line is. Once again, I'm running into the issue of it won't really hold, like a sharp crease there. So at least for the time being, I'm just going to kind of pin it in place. And I may still run the iron down along there anyway. Kind of playing with where the front and the back meet here, I'm still not 100% clear on how that's all going to go together, but we'll get there. We'll figure it out. Sometimes it's hard to visualize things, even like from a diagram on the pattern instructions, until you actually can fiddle with the fabric and see how it's going to turn out. I think I'm seeing it now. So then the next thing after making this fold, which was 1 5/8 inch from the top edge, you're supposed to, and I'm almost wondering if they should have put this first. Maybe it's a matter of preference. The folded over raw edge along the casing gets folded under 1/4 of an inch and stitched in place onto the pants. And I feel like that might have been like the better way to do this. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to cut here where the fold line is. Yeah, maybe that would be the better way. Kind of just talking through this process with you guys. Thanks for letting me ramble on and on. Unless I just don't press it at all and just turn it over and pin it and then stitch. Maybe I'll try that. Sometimes shortcuts work and sometimes they don't. So it's a lot of pinning, no pressing. I've got the casing turned under a 1/4 inch along the bottom edge and just pinned in place. And so what the ultimate thing, the goal is here, is to run a stitch as close along the bottom fold there, and then we'll also be stitching right along the top fold. The key though, especially because this fabric's thick and it might get bunched up, which will make it even tougher, is to get that stitching as close as I can to the bottom fold and to the top fold to allow plenty of floating room in the casing for the elastic. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and do the actual stitching and I'll be back. Okay, I've got my casing stitched. And the next step is to insert the elastic, which I have got to measure how much elastic I'm going to need. And there was a guide in one of the pattern pieces, but I've gotten to where I just, whenever there's a guide for elastic, I kind of just toss it or don't bother to cut it out, thinking, well, I'm just going to measure it on my own body and that's going to serve me better. So I'm going to measure a piece of elastic here. Okay, I've got my elastic cut and I've got one of these little doodads. Do you guys use these when you're working with elastic showing up? I hope that's showing up. Maybe if I put it against there. This thing is so handy. Before I got this little tool, I would just get like a big safety pin and pin it to the end and kind of, thread the safety pin through. But this thing seems to be easier. Of course, it's made, for that purpose. Although I have found that if there comes a point where I'm having to use too much force to get the elastic through the casing and I'm pulling too hard on the metal piece, that it just it detaches, like the elastic slips out of its grip. Hopefully that will not be the case today. I'm going to go in from the other side because of the fold right there at the center seam. Felt like it was getting stuck and I couldn't push it any further, so we'll go in from this side. Yeah, there we go. Much better. The little tool was kind of getting stuck into the fold of the seam allowance and wouldn't go any further. What I am going to do though, grab my pins, is to pin the end of the elastic to the end of the casing so that the raw edges meet up there. Then I am supposed to go ahead and baste the elastic to the end of the casing there, but I want to try the pants on and see how we're fitting at that point before I do that. So the pins will hold it in place for now. So I've got my elastic all the way through. I'm just trying to even it out here. And I'm going to turn the pants right side out and go ahead and try them on. And then we'll go from there. I think we're definitely on the home stretch now. I'll be right back. So they fit pretty well. I'm happy with the elastic in the back. I feel like it was just, I cut the right length there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is to baste the ends of the elastic to the ends of the casing. And then we'll be closing up the whole waistband, folding over the front, getting that stitched down. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got the ends basted together, and the pattern instructions do say to pull out the ends of the elastic and cut off close to stitching to reduce bulk, but there's really not a lot there, and I'm afraid to mess with it. Just like a 1/4 inch over, elastic extra, so I'm leaving it. Hopefully that won't be a problem. So now I'm going to pin the front to the back at the sides. turn these inside out again. Let's see what we are doing here. I feel like this is going to be the trickiest part of the whole pants, just because of the differences in height, with the front still needing to be folded over and then the back. So let me see what it says. So the way that these meet, if I'm understanding it correctly, and I do have to say that the pattern illustrations leave a lot to be desired. You're putting right sides together along the top of the back and the front, and the idea is just to stitch them together. I'm not even sure if that's showing up close on the camera, but it was kind of hard to get these to line up right, just because it's really bulky here with the elastic already in place, and it's wanting to like skew the pants waistband. I think I'm gonna have to try it again. Kind of feel like there must be a better way to do this. All right, I'm gonna try this one side and get it stitched together and see what it looks like, and if I'm doing it right before I move on to the other side. Well, I have to say this did not go as well as I would have expected, and it really looks terrible. I was having a really hard time figuring out how these even go together up there, and it shows in my stitching. I think I'm going to pick this first one apart and try it again. And anymore, when I unpick something, it's getting to be where I need my lighted magnifying glass. I'll be right back. Okay, I redid the one, and I'm not sure that I made it really any better, but I'm going to show you guys. And this is kind of like why I was worried about this whole waistband situation to begin with. Like, how do these get connected? And it's kind of, I feel like I've made a mess of it, but then on the other hand, I feel like the instructions weren't really that great. And maybe that's par for the course with a Vogue pattern. But here's what I've got on the one side. So this is the front waistband. It's not folded over yet. This is the back where the elastic casing is. And this is the top of the leg seam. And this is where the front and back waistbands meet. It's not clean at all. It's messy. I'm going to have to do cleanup, and I'm wondering how much, like when I turn the front waistband over, if I can kind of like smooth it out there a little bit. That's what I'm hoping. And then my other side even looks worse than that. Oh, okay. It's okay. I mean, that'll be hidden by a shirt anyway. These pants are pretty high-waisted, so I will definitely be wearing a shirt that comes, over the top of them. So, it is what it is at this point. So the next thing that we are going to do is, if you remember when I pressed 5/8 under on the front waistband, I can still see the faint pressing line there. That is going to get folded over. Let me turn these inside out again. That's going to get folded over to make the top of the waistband there. And the instructions say to slip stitch that whole front waistband down. But then it goes on to say that you're going to end up edge stitching it. So I think what I'm going to do first is to pin it in, like do the fold over and then pin it in place and see how it looks. And see if I could go ahead and just stitch that down. What it might end up being, though, is like a stitch in the ditch situation, which may not look that good if you can't do it right. I'm going to get it pinned in place and kind of see, what I have to work with and make a decision at that point. And I'm going to sit down while I do this. So I'll be back. Okay, I've got the waistband pinned, folded over and pinned in place. And I'm feeling like I can just go ahead and stitch it down with a straight stitch. It's really bulky here, and I know that's because there's a lot of foldovers and things like that, but also because this fabric is just so thick. But what I am running into, another issue where the front and the back meet, is that this is incredibly bulky here. I don't know if that's showing. There's no way that'll go under my machine, so that'll have to be slip stitched for sure by hand. Yeah, so then I'm wondering, probably what I will end up doing, is just slip stitching the whole thing in place. Because if I did the edge stitch along the front, you know, where it would show, it would stop. I couldn't bring it all the way to where the front and the back meet, because that is just so bulky, and I know my machine won't handle it. Even though my machine is pretty heavy duty, I don't think it'll go through that, and it won't look great at all. So I've got a lot of hand sewing ahead of me now, and I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back. And I did start out slip stitching the front waistband, folding it over to the inside, slip stitching the edge down. But what I was finding is that all along the front, on the right side, or the outside, you could see the slip stitches all along, you know, along the front waistband of the pants. It didn't look good, so I did go ahead and run it through my machine. And just like I suspected or expected, I couldn't get the stitching all the way to the edge, you know, where the front and back meet, because it is so bulky there. My machine would kind of lock up. So I went as far as I could. And in fact, I haven't picked the slip stitches out. And I don't know if you can see them right there, how good the lighting is here, but I'll have to get those out. So I did do that. And now I feel like the whole top part of the pants is done. I'm going to try them on with some shoes and kind of measure for the hem. And I finished the hems on the legs of my pants, and I filmed a little segment where I kind of talked about how that went. And when I was replaying it in the editing process, I found that there was no sound, so the microphone had cut out. So it's the next day, and I'm filming it now. The hem went fine. And if you saw like part one of this, where I was doing pattern adjustments and realized I didn't want the pants to be as short as the pattern made them to be, and I added like 5 or 6 inches onto the length of the legs of the pants. Well, I did end up taking off 1.5 inches on each leg. I was worried that I had added on too much length and I was going to waste a lot of fabric, but I only had to take off 1.5 inches, and I think that they're at the perfect length. So now I'm going to take you outside where it's like bright daylight and you could see better because it's so kind of dark in the house, and show you how the pants look. So if you're ready, let's do it. So what did you think? I'm pretty happy with them. As you can see from the video, maybe they are pretty high-waisted, or at least on me, they're high-waisted, which is not my preferred style. I don't mind it, but I generally like pants to sit right at my natural waistline, which if I had been more conscientious when I was measuring and doing pattern adjustments, I could have made that happen, but I'm fine with them as is. They're pretty comfortable. And part of that is due to the style of the pants. I like having the elastic in the back waist. And also the fabric is really comfortable. I know I keep raving about this fabric, but it's so good. Anyway, I'm not sure if I would make these again, and I think I will do a full pattern review on them, on the pattern. I tend to do reviews for patterns that are still in print or otherwise very readily available, like if it's a PDF pattern, or if you can readily find an old pattern on eBay or Etsy or something like that. So I probably will do a full pattern review on these, and I'll go into more detail. But I just wanted you guys, if you've been hanging out with me through the whole process of making these pants, to give you kind of a little summary for now. I appreciate you watching so much, and I do plan to get back into like my regular style of videos in the coming week and onward, with, you know, just talking about the different projects I'm doing Friday sews. I really miss doing the Friday sews videos. But sometimes we just have to change gears for a little while and do it a little differently. So again, I do appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.